What's up YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Justin Lowe, and the reason you're here is because I just ran my first ever marathon, 26.2 miles this past January here in Miami, Florida, and I'm going to share with you all about the secrets of how I got to running my first marathon at age 23. Now, before I get into the number one secret to marathon training, I want to give you a little bit of background as to myself, as to where my running was before this past January, so that you can kind of compare and see, where do I need to be, or where am I compared to me in terms of this marathon journey, so that as you go through maybe your own marathon, half marathon, 10K, 5K journey, you're able to kind of get an idea of what it will take for you to get to the point where you can run a marathon. And I ran the marathon in about 4 hours 26 minutes. Nothing super duper impressive by any means, but I finished, and that was the goal, is to finish the marathon. And so stick around so that I can share with you how I got there and what it took to get me to that point. So I started running in 2018 when I was in high school, back in Jamaica, and I would wake up every Thursday at 5 o'clock in the morning and run 5 miles. And I ran with a running club called Pacers Running Club, but man, those 5 miles used to be brutal. When I first started running with Pacers Running Club in Jamaica, I started running only 3 miles. I woke up at 5 a.m. on a Thursday and I'll run 3 miles, that's it. Week over week, as I did the 3 miles and stayed consistent, I increased to 4 miles until I got to the maximum mileage which they offered on Thursdays, which was 5 miles. And honestly, that at first was a real challenge. It was a challenge because that's like 45 minutes of straight running. And for somebody who's completely new to the sport, somebody whose body, whose heart, whose lungs is not yet at a place where I can necessarily sustain, running for 45 minutes straight, especially with the hills up and down in Jamaica, man, it was definitely a challenge to get from 3 miles consistently to 5 miles consistently, running at 5 o'clock in the morning. I think the most important thing from that though is that I stayed consistent. I ran those 5 miles every single Thursday for about a year. And then after a year, when I was, at a place where my body started to adjust to the 5 miles, when my lung capacity started to increase, my VO2 max started to increase, I was at a point where I started to feel comfortable with running. And so I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna sign up for my first 10K, which I did. So I signed up for my first 10K in February of 2019, and it was gonna be the Kingston City 10K. Which I was like, okay, 5 miles I did every Thursday. 10K is only 6 miles, 6.2 miles give or take. So that should be doable. I can get my training to get me to 10K. So signed up for it and was ready to run it in February, March, I think maybe February, March of 2019. Well, little did I know that I was running with a bunch of marathon runners. So in 2019, when I was like, hey, I'm so excited, I'm gonna run my first 6 miles, I'm gonna run my first 10K, I was telling all the other members of the running club, and they were like, why are you running 10K? Why don't you just do the half marathon? Like, everybody in the club is doing the half marathon. And I was like, whoa, I have just been running 5 miles every Thursday. They actually have a long run every Saturday, which they offer up to 12 miles to run. And I never went past 5 miles even on those days. So everybody came to me and they're like, why don't you do the half marathon? Why don't you do the half marathon? You're young, you can do it. At the time I was 18 years old. So in my head I was like, this race is maybe a month away. How am I supposed to go from 5 miles to 13.1 miles within the span of a month? That's kind of crazy to me, and that exponential increase in mileage probably isn't the healthiest thing. But anyways, what ended up happening is that I decided, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll run the mock half marathon. So my running club offered a mock run where we did the actual route of the half marathon. So I was like, okay, I'll try my best to do that. So before that though, I actually ran 8 miles with the club, then I did 10 miles a week after, and then I did 13.1 in the mock. And I was like, you know what? I actually felt pretty good about that. Like, I week over week increased in mileage, and then I got to the point where I could actually run 13.1 miles within the span of a month, which was wild to me. And I wondered, how did little old me that was running 3 miles struggling a year ago get to a point now where I can run 13.1 miles within a month of increasing mileage and feel good about it? Anyways, fast forward, I ran that half marathon, loved it, got a great medal from it. It was amazing, an amazing feeling to finish the half marathon. And when I got to college, I was like, I have to keep running. I just have to find a way to keep running because I love this thing. And it's not that I was training for a half marathon. I was never, in my head, I was never training for anything. I just fell in love with the process of running 5 miles every Thursday. I just fell in love with waking up in the morning and getting those endorphins from running those 5 miles. So when I got to college and it was time, okay, what clubs are you gonna join? Of course I joined the running club. Of course I joined the track club, where I was able to get onto the track and, you know, actually do distance workouts and start to build up my ability to run and my own physical fitness through something that I love doing. So throughout college, from freshman year to senior year, I was a part of the track and field club, and by my senior year, I was actually the distance captain of the club. So I was directing workouts, showing people how, you know, how many miles to do, what kind of distance workouts to do on the track, which was crazy to me because I had no real formal experience in running. I didn't compete in running, I didn't do track events. I had people who came from high school doing cross country, people who were on their high school track teams, and little old me, I was just there being like, okay, we're gonna do 200, 400, 600, 800s today. But I had no experience in really training because I'd never thought of track and field or running as something competitive. For me, it was just something that I loved to do, something that I enjoyed showing up to do every week, week over week, because it was something that made me feel good. It was something that made me feel happy. So of course, running through high school, running through college, after graduating from college, and I moved to Miami, I was like, listen, this is my opportunity. This is my moment for me to actually get out there and run a marathon, because I moved to Miami in May, June of 2023, and the Miami Marathon was in January of 2024. So registration opened in August of 2023, and the first day it opened, I signed up, I put my name down, I committed. I was like, hey, I'm going to do this. And from August to January, that was it. That was my training time. That was, let's actually get from 13.1 that I had done in 2019. Now it was 2023. Hadn't run anything near to a half marathon within that time. So I was like, all right, I've done a half marathon already. Let's double that. I'm a lot better now because I was on the track and field club. So I can get to a point now where I can actually accomplish this thing that is like regarded as success within the running community. So now let's talk a little bit about training. I started back training in August of 2023 in the same way that I knew how to train for running. I ran 5 miles every week. I started out running every week 5 miles, and then by August, September, mid-August, late September, I started running about 8 miles every week, 2 to 3 times a week. So, you know, by then I was running about, let's call it 10 to 15 miles, maybe 16 miles a week in September. As it got closer and closer to the January date, and of course in Miami, thankfully it gets cooler and cooler as it goes down to the winter seasons, I started to run more and more miles. So I started doing 10-mile runs and 12-mile runs, which were like actual training runs now to get my body used to the distance of going up to 26.2 by January. So in Miami, I was doing those 10-mile runs, those 12-mile runs, and then in December, I actually went home to Jamaica to be there with my family for the Christmas season, and I was actually able to continue training with Pacers Running Club that I had joined in 2018. So of course, as I said, they were all marathon runners to some extent. So I was able to just join them, join the Saturday runs where they were doing 12-mile runs. I joined a 12-mile run actually, and because I ran a little bit faster than the rest of the club, I decided let me push, and so I ran a 15-mile run when I was in Jamaica there. Then I came back to Miami and I ran another 12-miler, I did another 15-miler, and then pushed to an 18-miler by like mid-January, which is a couple of weeks before the marathon. And then in the weeks before the marathon, it was all about rest, it was all about tapering down, it was all about getting the miles down so that by January 28th or 29th, I think it was, I'll be ready for 26.2. So after running about 18 miles, I think I got up to 17.5, and then my leg actually cramped in my training in Miami. That was when I was like, all right, you know what? I've gotten to a point where my body feels good getting to 18 miles. I think I can get to 26.2. Usually, experts will say, hey, run at least 3 20-milers so that your body can feel good with the 20 miles. I didn't do that. I would definitely recommend to do that. So if you're planning to run a marathon, get a couple 20-mile runs in, especially in the temperature and climate of the marathon that you're going to be running. just so that your body can get used to pushing all the way to 20, and then the last 6 is like, okay, you can do the last 6. But 18 for me was a little bit short of that, and so I definitely felt in the actual marathon, okay, 18 to 26.2, that's still another 8 miles. You know, that's still a kind of a big chunk compared to 6 miles. I mean, non-runners are probably looking at me like, you sound crazy, but between 18 and 20, like that difference I think is important, so that if you're training for a marathon, you're actually at a point where the last 6.2 miles don't feel, you know, overwhelming. They don't feel intimidating because you've already gotten to 20. Like that mental number of 20 and having that 2 in front of the 0 actually makes a difference in terms of your training. So after I ran those 18 miles, I tapered down. I ran back to 10 miles, went back down to 8 miles, back down to 5 miles week over week. And then the week before the marathon, the most I ran was 3 miles. The day before the marathon, I walked a mile, and then I rested. I just rested the entire time, pretty much throughout the week, was eating a lot of carbs, pasta, things like that, and getting ready for marathon day on the Sunday. So when I ran the marathon, it was a great feeling to cross that finish line. My leg actually cramped at around mile 21, so I was forced to walk mile 21 to 22 and then push through that injury from mile 22 to 26.2. So definitely think about, I wouldn't actually recommend to do the Miami Marathon because the Miami Marathon got so hot. It was like 80 something degrees running in the blaring sun that day. And obviously that's why a lot of people cramped. People passed out and stuff that day. So would not recommend to do it if the weather doesn't look great. But yeah, I finished, and that was definitely one of the best feelings in my life. You know, is crossing that finish line, getting to a point where I'm like, this is my training paying off. This is me pushing my body to a limit that, you know, it's never been to before. Actually exceeding and pushing my physical capacities, my physical limitations, and doing something that I'd put my mind to. But not only I'd put my mind to, but I'd realized that I've gotten to this point of running a marathon because I fell in love with running. I really fell in love with just the training process, the idea of showing up every Thursday, the idea of showing up for my 5 mile runs, my 8 mile runs, my 10 mile, 12 mile, 15 mile, 18 mile runs. You know, falling in love with that process will make it so much easier for you to train for something. And I think that goes for everything in life. So the number one secret to running a marathon is consistency. It's all about falling in love with the process. It's all about falling in love with running the small mileages. If you don't feel like doing it, get up, go run 1 mile if you don't feel like running 3, run 3 miles if you don't feel like running 5, run 5 miles if you don't feel like running 8, but get out there and get moving. Because the only way that you'll make progress is if you actually go out there and make progress. You're probably like, whoa, Justin, duh. But it sounds simple, and it is, because with something like running, if you don't run like for 1 week after you've been training for weeks, you'll find that you start to feel your body decline in its ability in just a week. So the key to actually training for a marathon and to actually succeeding in that race is to just stay consistent. It's to get out there and keep doing what it is that you need to do to move the needle just a little bit further every single day. Because obviously you may not be able to run every single day, but if you can move a little bit every single day, if you can get a mile walk or a mile run in every single day, keep the heart pumping, keep the blood flowing, you'll definitely find that marathon training becomes so much more rewarding, so much more fulfilling, because it helps you to not only get to the marathon, but it also helps you to learn how to build a habit, and it learns how to be consistent, and you learn how to actually fall in love with the process of training for something. So if you're thinking about running a marathon, my number one secret for you is to just keep showing up. If you can't run a mile, run half a mile. If you can't run 2 miles, run 1 mile. But keep showing up to every single run, every single day that you schedule your training, show up. Show up, and you might not feel great, because obviously we all have our days where we don't feel great, where we wake up, we feel tired, we feel demotivated, but just keep showing up. I know for me, since 2018, I just kept showing up. I had never thought I would ever run a marathon when I started waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and run. I just enjoyed doing it. I just enjoyed the process of running. I just enjoyed seeing people in the run club. I just enjoyed feeling good in my body running. And that little old me in 2018, ran the half marathon in 2019, and now he's looking at me here in 2024 telling you to go run a marathon, and he's like, I can't believe that I ran a marathon. And if I fell in love with the process, you can fall in love with the process too. And if I can do a marathon, you can do a marathon too. And as usual, thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, leave a comment, share the video with somebody who you might think is training for a marathon. If you're training for a marathon, let me know in the comments. Would love to talk to you about training, would love to talk to you about what the mentality has to be like, how consistency can look like for you, and to kind of just help you along on that journey, because it's really important, I think, to be consistent and to have accountability. So thank you again so much for being here, and I will see you guys next time on another JLo Talks video here on the Life of JLo. See you guys next time.